Discover the spine-chilling secrets of Texas Tower 4, a sinister, cursed isolation revealed. Emily stood in the dim hallway of Texas Tower 4, her heart pounding as shadows danced on the peeling walls. The building creaked ominously, each groan sending chills down her spine. It was the kind of place where hope went to die, much like the tenants who vanished without a trace, leaving only ghostly whispers in their wake. She couldn't shake the feeling that the walls were listening, soaking in every secret. Tonight, they felt closer than ever, like a dark presence pressing in on her. As she prepared for her night shift, Jake lounged on the sagging couch, scrolling through his phone. Emily's exhaustion clawed at her, dragging her down into the depths of despair. The rent was due, bills piled high, and the pressure was nearly suffocating. With the sun's last light fading, the shadows gathered strength. Rumors tangled in the fabric of the tower, tales of the last tenant who simply disappeared, leaving behind nothing but a cold echo. Emily scoffed at the superstitions but felt the weight of paranoia coil tight in her gut. That night, after spending a long shift soothing the sick and weary, she returned home to find Hank lurking outside her apartment. He grinned too widely, an unsettling smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just looking out for the neighborhood, you know," he said, leaning too close, his breath heavy with something akin to steel. A flicker of worry curled in her stomach as he rambled about the community patrol, his words prickling her skin. With each passing minute, she felt more ensnared in a web of protection that felt anything but safe. Later, as she settled in for the night, Emily heard them again, soft whispers filtering through the hallway like a chilling breeze, carrying promises of doom. Shadows leered through the cracked window, and an icy draft brushed against her skin. The air thickened with dread. This routine shouldn't feel terrifying, but the voices twisted familiar sounds into sinister echoes. She pulled Jake tighter, feeling the tremors of fear reverberate through her. Was it the building playing tricks, or was something in the dark waiting? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The whispers grew louder, like a taunting chorus from beyond the grave, as panic seized her. Hank's eyes were often just outside her window, peering in, watching her every move. Fear coiled around her like a vice. The neighbors whispered about the tower's dark past, of deals made with corrupt officials and the filth that layered the cracks in the walls. Was she trapped in this nightmare with no escape? A confrontation with Hank became inevitable. His unsettling behavior spiraled out of control, each encounter laced with veiled threats. "I know you and your boy," he sneered one evening, leaning closer than comfort allowed. Emily felt crushed under the weight of her circumstances. What was she to do? Powerless and exposed, she began to understand. To survive, she would have to confront the horrifying truth lurking within Texas Tower 4. But even now, in the dead of night, something deeper called her to look back. The haunting whispers beckoned, and the shadows deepened. Would she unravel the mystery before it consumed them both? Emily's breath hitched in her throat. Her instincts screamed at her to turn away from the window, to hide in the shadows of her apartment, but an overwhelming curiosity drew her closer. She peered out into the darkness, expecting Hank's grotesque grin, but found only emptiness. It felt wrong, like the absence of his presence left a void that swirled into something darker. Suddenly, the lights flickered, plunging her into momentary darkness before they sputtered back on. A shiver crawled down her spine. Jake stirred, his groggy voice barely above a whisper. "What's wrong, Em?" "Nothing, just a flicker," she lied, her pulse quickening. She needed to focus. She had to confront Hank, but maybe, just maybe, it wasn't just him roaming the hallways. The whispers had shifted, morphing into something more recognizable, a language she should have understood. The building throbbing with life, or was it death? The air thickened painfully with tension, wrapping around her chest like a vice. Heart racing, she turned towards Jake, who still clung sleepily to the remnants of his dreams. "Stay here. Lock the door." Without waiting for a response, she slipped into the hallway, its shadows swallowing her whole. The silence felt deafening. As she ventured down the corridor, the walls seemed to pulse a rhythmic, almost heartbeat-like thump that resonated deep within her bones. Every step echoed, drawing attention from unseen eyes, as if the building itself began to take note of her presence. The whispers echoed louder, some felt scornful, others desperate. They twisted around her, seeping into her thoughts. She needed to listen. "Help us," one whisper pleaded. "No. Get out." Another screamed. The dissonance wrapped around her, nearly causing her to lose her footing. She paused, closing her eyes to block out the oppressive atmosphere. What if the rumors were true? What if beneath this facade of crumbling plaster and peeling paint lay the souls of the lost? Ahead, a flicker of light caught her attention. A door slightly ajar illuminated the hallway with a sickly glow. Emily stepped closer, compelled and terrified. As she glanced inside, the scene froze her in place. A room cluttered with faded photographs hung like ghosts on the wall, the faces of past tenants staring out, hollow and mournful. They seemed to know her, to plead with her. Among them, the last tenant, a woman with eyes wide in terror. She clutched a small child, their expressions twisted in agony. Emily's heart raced. Did they stay in this place to warn her, or was it a beckoning? With a deep breath, she crossed the threshold. The whispers intensified, and she felt cold fingers dance along her skin. "Help us finish what we started," they whispered insidiously. Frozen, she looked down at the floor, realizing the shadows pooled at her feet, creeping closer like a hungry predator. She turned, ready to retreat, but the door slammed shut behind her. Panic surged as she pulled at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. She was trapped. "Emily," a voice lilted from the shadows. It was Hank. He emerged, taking his time, savoring her fear. "You shouldn't have come here." His menacing smirk paralyzed her. The weight of something heavy lingered in the air, a promise of too much darkness filling the room. She felt the shadows writhing around her, eager to consume. They weren't just a part of the building, they were a part of the story, one that centered on her. Would she uncover the truth behind Texas Tower 4 before it swallowed her along with the others? Outside, a siren pierced the night. She could hear it, but all she could focus on was Hank's darkening smile as the walls continued closing in around her. The whispers begged her to believe. Desperation hung heavy. What were the secrets they wanted her to find? Emily's heart raced, echoing her every fluttering thought. Hank's figure loomed larger, casting a long shadow that enveloped her with a sense of dread. She fought to catch her breath, battling the suffocating weight of fear pressing down on her. "What do you want from me?" She managed to gasp, desperation lacing her voice. "Isn't it obvious?" Hank replied, amusement glinting in his eyes. He stepped closer, his presence commanding and overwhelming. "You're already a part of it." The shadows twitched hungrily at his feet, as if urging him onward. She scanned the dim room, desperate for an escape, but the photographs on the wall felt like judgmental spectators. Their hollow eyes seemed to widen in horror at her predicament. "Why me?" she whispered, betraying a fragility she hadn't intended to show. "What did I do?" "What did you do?" Hank echoed, his smile twisting unnaturally. "Just by being here, you've signed an unspoken contract. Just like the others." Panic clawed at her throat. The others? She thought again of the woman in the picture, the mother holding her child. What happened to them? "They were chosen," Hank said, his tone dripping with mockery. "Just like you, but we're still waiting for you to realize the choice is yours." Emily gritted her teeth, trying to summon defiance. A beat of silence hung between them, nearly suffocating. Then, an icy breeze swept through the room, sending chills racing across her skin. The whispers surged, crescendoing into a deafening plea, begging for release, for salvation. Finish what we started, don't leave us. Gritting her teeth, she took a step back. I want to help you. Help? Hank smirked, an unsettling glint in his eyes. It's already too late for that. With a jolt, the lights flickered again, momentarily illuminating the cramped space. In that brief flash, Emily saw figures emerging from the shadows, faint outlines of the previous tenants, their mouths moving in a silent scream. Fear shot through her like a bullet. No! She charged to the door, throwing herself against it. Her palms slapped against the wood, cold and unyielding. It felt like a living entity, as if it thrummed in response to her fear. Let me out. Laughter echoed in the narrow confines. Hank's voice entwined with the whispers, creating a chorus of despair that filled her head. There's no escape. You belong to us now. As she pushed harder against the door, the figure of Hank loomed larger, glowing ominously in the dim light. She could feel the chill from the shadows slice through her, drawing closer till it seemed like a living creature. A part of the building had come alive, and the ancient walls cradled secrets far deeper than she could grasp. Then, a loud rattling broke through the air, causing her to halt. She spun around, and her breath caught. Hank was no longer standing still, he was moving forward, shadows trailing him, curling around the room like smoke. You can't resist it. You'll learn to embrace it. What do you mean? She shouted, eyes wide. With a flick of his wrist, the photographs erupted into movement, the faces twisting in agony, reaching out as if to drag her into their hell. The room warped and spun, reality itself warping around her. It was beyond madness, a brink she had never thought possible. Join us or be consumed, his voice rang out, clear as the sirens that still wailed outside. Emily's resolve trembled. Could she fight this darkness, or would she succumb to its siren call like those before her? Surrender felt imminent, but something sparked within, a faint glimmer of defiance, a driving need to escape. Not like this. She screamed, launching herself at the door again. But suddenly, the shadows surged like a wave, crashing down over her. The whispers curled around her, frantic and desperate, and she could feel warmth fading. And then that voice, haunting her with terrifying clarity, Emily, you must remember, you are the key. Would she be able to grasp the truth before darkness enveloped her completely? Or would Texas Tower 4 claim yet another lost soul? Emily felt her strength draining, the shadows coiling around her with a ferocity she had never known. The whispers morphed, now filled with urgency, urging her, taunting her. Remember, the truth lies within, find it before it's too late. She blinked rapidly as images flashed before her eyes, flickering memories of laughter, warmth, and faces that had once meant safety. They twisted into horror as Hank's shadow swallowed them whole. Stop! She screamed, but her voice felt weak, drowning beneath the tidal wave of darkness. Hank approached, his expression a mask of twisted delight. They think you can escape, he chuckled, the sound reverberating through the room with malevolence. But you're already here. This is your world now. Embrace it before you're trapped like them. She fought back, slamming her fists against the door, the hardness of the wood biting into her palms. You're lying. I want to stay. I have to get out. But with each desperate blow, the shadows thickened, filling the space with an oppressive weight. The air turned icy, forcing a shiver of dread down her spine. She spun around again, desperate for a glimmer of light, something to latch onto. Who are you? Emily demanded, her voice trembling but determined. Just a guide, Hank replied, his grin stretching unnaturally wide. One who enlightens those brave enough to take the leap. You're frightened now, but fear only deepens understanding. Remember, they didn't get to choose. You have that power. The swirling shadows exploded into frantic figures, faces contorted in terror, reaching for her with ghostly hands, their mouths moving in silent pleas. Emily recoiled as one of them reached too close. It whispered her name, echoing in her ears. No! Panic surged through her, and she stumbled back, colliding with the flickering wall. It wasn't just a wall, it was a gateway. She could feel it, pulsating like a heartbeat, urging her forward. You can't take me. Take? Hank purred, his voice smooth and slippery. You belong here willingly, Emily. You're part of this living nightmare now. Look deeper. With a fierce scream, she closed her eyes, pushing against the shadows, desperate for clarity. Beneath the chill, she felt something, a warmth flickering inside her. The sound of whispers faded, replaced by a drumbeat. Her blood pulsed with new vigor. What do you want is all just a trick. Think back, Emily. Think. He insisted, his voice weaving into the shadows. Images began to surface: a childhood home, memories of a red door, laughter shared with a brother now lost to time. No, no, she murmured, flooded with guilt and anger, her heart racing. You can't keep me here. But the truth was creeping closer, the faint glow of realization illuminating the edges of her mind. She was both the hunted and the hunter here. I will not be yours. The shadows screeched and faltered, revealing hidden edges of the room, a doorway beyond the door, an exit obscured by the haunted faces of former tenants. They glared openly, shadows solidifying around Hank's feet. You're drawing near the end, Emily. Defy me, and I will unleash them upon you. No. She blurted out, heart pounding in her chest. Tell me. What do I have to do? Am I really the key? Hank's laughter echoed, dark and sinister. To break the chains, you must decide. What do you truly want? To leave this place or to join their realm? The weight of his words crushed down on her. The decision loomed in front of her like a gaping chasm. Could she face the truth? Or would she plunge into the abyss alongside the tortured souls clamoring for her to stay? Emily felt herself teetering at the edge as the shadows whispered with desperate intensity, enticing yet horrifically familiar. The choice was hers, yet that realization only deepened her terror. She clenched her fists, a flicker of bravery igniting within. I want freedom. But Hank's chuckle resonated no longer with humor, it sliced through her like a blade. Then remember. The choice you make won't lead to freedom but to something far worse. A sudden surge of wind swept through the room, swirling darkness, and as the shadows tightened, Emily braced for what would come next. Would she escape this nightmare? Or would reality itself twist around her until she became another ghost entwined in Texas Tower 4's evil embrace? She felt it, that surge of energy, rolling over her like a tsunami of bitter ice. The shadows wrapped tighter, constricting her movements and twisting her perception of time. Every breath became labored, every heartbeat a reminder of her impending doom. You want freedom? Hank's voice dripped with mocking amusement, echoing through the murky depths. Then prepare to pay the price. The shadows faded briefly, revealing a swirling vortex of sepulchral faces, their mouths open in silent screams as they darted in and out of the darkness, a haunting ballet of despair. Emily's heart raced. What did he mean by price? She could barely think as the shadows began to pulsate in rhythm to her racing pulse. Panic surged, clawing up her throat. I won't pay anything. Let them go. Those souls are forever bound. Hank beckoned, his voice a thread of silk sliding down her spine, coaxing more fear with every syllable. Just like you will be soon. The air around her turned stifling, each inhalation a struggle against the weight of her own dread. The memory of the red door flashed again, so bright it seemed to illuminate the darkness, inviting yet cautioning. If you want to be free, you must face what you've hidden away. Stop it. You don't understand. Emily shouted, desperation spilling from her lips. I can't go through with this, I won't. But the shadows listened too closely, responding to her plea like hounds to a whistle. They surged at her, the faces of the lost inching closer, stretching their mouths open wider, shimmering with spectral tears that fell like metronomic droplets. "You think they weep for you?" Hank whispered, spinning on his heels like a dark reflection of a sinister waltz. "They weep for themselves. They wish they could trade places with you, even in this hell they inhabit." Emily shook her head violently, feeling her resolve begin to splinter under the weight of truth. "No. They can't want this. No one would want this." A hand shot forward from the darkness, fingers grasping desperately, chilling her to the bone. She spun away, realizing the trembling desperation in their eyes mirrored her own. "I have to fight." "Fight?" Hank's laughter reverberated through the dark chamber, a sinister echo that bounced off the walls. "There is no fighting here, Emily. You are merely a passenger in a train that runs on fear and despair. The tracks are already laid before you." Her spirit screamed. If it was already too late, what happened if she embraced the shadows? Trembling, she bit down on her lip, tasting iron, the taste of her own growing fear. She felt her mind clawing at the edges as memories rushed back, things too painful to revisit. Her brother's laughter clouded over, replaced by the chilling void of silence that had haunted her for years. "Face your deepest regret, and you may find clarity." Hank's silhouette became blurred, twisting with the shadows like a nightmarish puppet. "I will not," Emily shouted, but the darkness throbbing around her whispered in agreement. Visions of the past invaded her mind, the sound of shattered glass, laughter replaced by screams. "Look deeper," the shadows murmured, weaving tighter, cocooning her in their horrific embrace. "You will see it hurt to resist," but she needed to know. With a shivering whisper, she finally gave in. "Show me the moment." She uttered those words, the vortex spiraled open, thrusting Emily into a kaleidoscope of horror, the truth uncurling like a serpent, poised to strike. What awaited her was no longer a question. It was a certainty that wrapped around her neck, tightening with each flicker of memory, each truth unveiled. But as the images broke apart like glass shards, a shattering scream erupted from her depths. It drowned out the laughter, the whispers, and even the haunting cries for her to join them. In that moment of fury, a new realization ignited. What if she was not alone in this? What if those she fought for, the souls condemned here, could still find a way to escape? Suddenly, the shadows seemed to shift, recoiling just slightly, as if stirred by the flicker of hope. A flicker. An ember. Unseen before. Was the darkness altering, or were they simply waiting for her to make her true decision? As Emily grasped onto that faint glimmer, the darkness trembled. The weight lifted just enough to feel air fill her lungs again, as if the chains might snap, but what price would that exact? Was she brave enough to take the leap? Or would she shatter beneath the struggle? The room pulsed, shadows quaking, as if in response to her resolve. She could feel the ground shifting, the door behind her creaking with anticipation. What awaited her beyond the threshold? Would freedom finally come at the cost of a secret buried too deep? The shadows whispered louder, pushing her forward. And as she took her first step toward the door, a new terror swept over her. Was there something or someone waiting on the other side? With her heart pounding, she could only wonder if she was racing toward freedom or hell. The air around Emily buzzed with electric tension as she edged closer to the door. The once solid frame now seemed like a portal to another world, trembling with the whispers of both promise and peril. Her heart drummed in her chest, a crescendo of hope wrapped in fear. What lay beyond was a mystery that gnawed at her gut. Was it the vision of freedom she hungered for, or a deeper truth buried beneath layers of grief and sorrow? A shadow slithered along the wall, taunting her with reminders of what she sought to escape while she clenched her teeth against the rising tide of dread. "Don't look back." Hank's voice clawed at her from the shadows, a sinister command laced with chilling delight. "You'll only find despair waiting for you, just like it always has." The desire to run surged within her, but the shadows binding her felt stronger, richer. They were alive, pulsating like a heart that thrummed with ancient terror. Every soul trapped within mirrored her own fears, every scream echoing her silent guilt. Emily inhaled deeply, her breath hitching. "If this is my past," she muttered fiercely, "then I'll face it." With determination igniting within her, she stepped across the threshold. Instantly, the world shifted, not into the clean, pure light she had hoped for, but into a realm that twisted her reality like a warping mirage. The landscape morphed into a labyrinth of dark hallways and fog-cloaked corners, each crack in the walls oozing shadows like a festering wound. Her eyes darted around, searching for anything familiar. Space twisted around her, filled with the echoes of laughter that turned into screams. Muffled voices called out from the ether, "Emily! Help us!" Their cries were a chorus of anguish, dragging her deeper into the blackness and wrapping around her like a shroud. She forced herself to listen, to navigate this hellscape. "What have you locked away?" they taunted. The voices harmonized, a cacophony that made her skin crawl. Panic flared in her chest, and she stumbled forward, seeking anything that would shed light on her darkest fears. Shadows darted at the edges of her vision, clawing at her, each grasping hand a potential anchor pulling her further under. "Do you still think you can save them?" Hank's laugh reverberated through the hall, sending chills racing down her spine. "You can't even save yourself." The echoes twisted into a malevolent mirth, and Emily clenched her fists, feeling an anger rise. "I'll find a way," she declared, the words slashing through the darkness like a knife. It was enough, for the shadows recoiled, retreating into broken walls like frightened creatures. But the moment of reprieve shattered when a sudden warmth enveloped her, blinding light pouring through a door that had materialized out of the darkness. It beckoned her forward, offering the promise of hope, yet something about it screamed of betrayal. "Don't trust it." A haunting whisper floated to her ears, a voice she vaguely recognized, her brother's. Panic cranked her heart rate higher, the urgency to act coiling tighter. But as she stumbled toward the illuminated entrance, doubts clawed at her. "What have I lost to get here?" Her hand hovered just above the doorknob. She could feel the weight of every decision made in fear, and the myriad choices leading her to this moment. Behind her, the shadows wailed, a discordant symphony born of desperation, urging her to stay. The visions of the faces long lost surged again, filled with a wild hope she never allowed to bloom. "Emily," they whispered, their cries merging with the siren call of the light. "You can't go back." With a final glance over her shoulder, she met their haunted gazes, and her heart splintered. Torn between a past she could not change and an uncertain future that sparkled with ominous promise, she had to choose. Was salvation just beyond the door, or would it be the beginning of another nightmare? With a trembling hand, she turned the knob, ready to confront whatever lay beyond, all the while praying it wouldn't swallow her whole. The door creaked open. And in that moment, even before she stepped through, the laughter swelled around her, tantalizing and terrifying. Something was waiting, but what? The shadows exploded with fury. Would she emerge unscathed, or would the darkness claim her? The brightness flooded her senses, a blinding burst that washed over her like a wave. Emily stumbled forward into the brilliance, her breath catching. But the light turned cold, the warmth slipping through her fingers like sand. Instead of revealing freedom, she found herself in an expansive room, the center of a hauntingly empty space, far more sinister than she expected. High above, a cracked ceiling loomed, webbing with shadows that danced above her head. Abstract shapes twisted into grotesque forms as if mocking her and her fearless resolve. The walls throbbed with whispers, an internal heartbeat of the room. "You shouldn't be here," they hissed. The voices coiled around her, tugging and twisting, a plea and a warning all at once. "What is this place?" she muttered, each word a feather that floated into the suffocating silence. She felt small, like a child lost in a house of horrors. The shadows darted along the walls, closing in, draping her with the weight of despair. Suddenly, a jarring crash echoed across the empty room, and her heart leaped into her throat. A door slammed shut behind her, sealing her in. Panic unfurled inside her like a wild beast. She turned, desperate for another way out, but the door had vanished, swallowed by the very shadows that whispered her name. Emily, the chilling tone rolled out from the corners, wrapping around her ankles, pulling her deeper into the nightmare. She sprinted, her feet pounding against the marble floor, chasing whatever flicker of hope might lie ahead. She passed doorways that opened into voids, corridors that twisted away from anything resembling an escape. Her breath quickened, every step heavier as dread seeped into her bones. Hushed voices enveloped her, memories mingled with the voices of the lost. "Save us, Emily," they called, a pleading that tore through her mind. The more she ran, the more their agony echoed, a relentless reminder of her failures. "Stop!" she shouted. "What do you want from me?" But only laughter responded, sharp and cruel, dancing like flames in the wind. The echo came from every direction, gnawing at her sanity. She pressed onward, heart racing like a trapped bird, desperate to find an answer or a way out. Up ahead, a flicker caught her eye, a lighter shade of darkness. She sprinted toward it, the desperate hope igniting within her. As she neared, she realized it was a window, dirty and cracked but putting forth glimmers of sunlight. If only she could reach that light. She skidded to a halt, freezing as shadows twisted wildly around the threshold. "You can't go through," hissed a voice, filled with malice. "They will never let you leave." Just beyond the window, a warped scene came into focus. A violent storm raged outside, thunder crashing like a countdown to disaster. Fear constricted her throat, choking her resolve. "Please!" she cried out, "I need to get out." A sudden silence fell, thick as impending doom. All the shadows coiled around her like serpents, tightening and pulling her back. The voices turned angry, melding into a monstrous chorus that sent icy fingers crawling down her spine. "You don't belong here." In that moment, she understood she wasn't just facing her past, she was confronting her deepest fears. The wild visions of loss twisted, writhing, until they crystallized into one face: her brother. His eyes, filled with pleading despair, held her paralyzed. "You're too late," he whispered. "You can't save me." A gasp escaped her lips. The knowledge sliced through her. The choice was hers. She could either embrace the shadows, join them, or fight against a fate she could never outrun. The ground beneath her began to tremble. Shadows reached out, clawing at her, begging her to yield. "What will you choose, Emily?" they cackled. She had to decide. And as the air crackled with tension, the room threatened to close in around her, she felt something shift within. "Enough!" she screamed, the word anchoring her to her resolve, but the shadows bared their teeth, and the room quivered with ominous anticipation, ready to unleash terror anew. A roar filled the space, drowning her in an echoing familiarity. There was something darker waiting, something that would challenge her even further. What other horrors lurked behind the veils of this cursed place? And would she finally end the torment, or would it consume her completely? Emily stood firm, hands clenched at her sides, teeth gritted against the chaos swirling around her. The shadows morphed into frantic shapes, amplifying her fear, challenging her resolve. Each flickering silhouette seemed to taunt her, whispering her deepest regrets in voices that were both familiar and haunting, the echoes of her past clawing at her sanity. With every ounce of strength, she pushed forward, focusing on the glimpse of light beyond the shadows. "I won't be afraid anymore," she shouted, but doubt dripped from her words, pooling on the cold, hard floor. The roar swelled again, a monstrous sound reverberating against her bones. It morphed into a guttural growl, filling the room like the growl of an unseen beast. The air turned heavy, laden with dread, suffocating as the shadows encroached further. They crept towards her, tickling her skin with a chilling touch, whispering promises of peace if she surrendered. "Save us, let us in," they cried, weaving in and out of coherence, voices blending, as if many souls were fighting to be heard. Tremors rippled through the ground beneath her. It felt alive, restless, as if the very foundation of this cursed place was fed by despair. Emily's heart pounded like a drum, a frantic rhythm marking the countdown to her next move, the moment she must decide. Summoning her courage, she spun around, memories of her brother flashing in her mind. His laughter. His warmth. The way he looked at her the last time they were together. "I can't let you down, no matter how hard it gets," she declared, reclaiming her purpose. The darkness pulsed in response, twisting indignantly. She felt the weight of regret bearing down on her like a choking fog, dragging her back toward the ground. The shadows howled, their cries piercing through her thoughts. "Doomed. You are doomed," they hissed, and the darkness thickened, wrapping around her like barbed wire, but she refused to back down. "Fight. You're not my brother, you're a lie." Her voice rose, emboldened, and with an instinct she didn't understand, Emily reached out, her fingers brushing against the nearest shadow. It felt warm and living, a deceptive comfort amidst frantic terror. Suddenly, the room shuddered violently, and with it, the whispers transformed into a cacophony of grating sounds, pounding, scratching, clamoring for release. Emily's pulse quickened wildly as she rushed toward the window again. The light pulsed, beckoning her with a fierce promise of freedom, yet shrouded in uncertainty. "Leave this place!" The shadows screamed, desperate and enraged. Black tendrils shot out, lashing at her, seeking to drag her back into the darkness. She stumbled away, nearly losing her footing, but then, an image flickered in her mind, a vision of holding her brother one last time, of a promise she made to protect him. The urgency surged within her. "No!" she shouted defiantly, shifting her weight and smashing her hand against the glass. "I will not yield." The glass shattered under the pressure of her intent, splintering with a deafening crack. Light exploded through the newly formed holes, igniting the shadows with blinding brilliance. The voices wailed in agony, recoiling as fragments of darkness fell away, but just as Emily thought she could leap through to safety, a figure emerged from the depths of the shadows, its features mercifully obscured. The air turned icy, and dread seeped back into the room. "Where do you think you're going?" it growled, a smile curling unsettlingly across its face. Terror clawed at her heart once more. Was it truly her brother, or yet another illusion concocted by this cursed space? She froze, her breath hitching once again as the creature advanced, the shadows swirling like a storm at its command. "The true test is only just beginning," it said, and a shrill laugh echoed in the room, freezing her blood. What power lay within this horrific realm, and how much further would Emily have to go to confront her worst fears? Would she escape, or was the darkness merely waiting for the opportune moment to devour her whole? Emily's heart raced, a pulse quickening against the chilling silence that followed the creature's taunt. The shadows snaked closer, undulating like a flood, quick to reclaim their ground as tendrils lashed out. She could almost hear the sizzling of them grazing her skin, hot and cold all at once, wrapping themselves tight around her wrists, her ankles, dragging her deeper into despair. "Look at you," the creature hissed, its voice slicing through the clamor. "You think you're special? Everyone feels loss, Emily. It's time to embrace it." The words wrapped around her like a vice, squeezing her throat tight until it became hard to breathe. Panic surged, pushing her instincts to fight, to flee. "You're wrong," she shouted, forcing the words through clenched teeth. "You don't own me." The shadows paused, surprised by her defiance. Emily seized the moment, tightening her muscles and wrenching her arms free, sending a wave of fury through her limbs. The darkness roared in protest, a terrible sound that rattled the walls. Would the shadows figure out she wasn't just a scared girl, that she could stand against them? "Your light won't last, little girl." The creature cackled, drawing nearer. The icy breath of its presence chilled the air, pricking her skin like shards of glass. Shadows danced around it, forming a ghastly cloak that hung heavy with foul energy. She cast a desperate glance back at the broken window behind her, shards still glittering, a beacon of hope against the writhing gloom. But could she make it? Every instinct screamed caution, urging her to run, yet the vision of her brother's smile burned in her mind, unyielding. Instead of retreating, Emily pressed forward, heart pounding like a war drum. "You're nothing," she shot back, knowing the words were just as much a lie as the shadows were to her. The air hummed with tension as she dared to move closer to the figure, her pulse roaring in her ears. The creature grinned wider, a grotesque twist of malice. "You think this is just about you and your brother? Oh, sweet Emily, this is your choice too." Suddenly, it snapped its fingers. The shadows surged, forming a tighter net, forcing her to stumble backward. Her heart felt like it might explode, trapped in this remorseless cage of despair. The room darkened further, the boundaries between reality and nightmare crumbling. Memories of her brother flooded back, too bright to be contained. Their laughter echoed like a cruel symphony in her ear. "You left me." "No!" she screamed, eyes wide and frantic. "I didn't leave you. I promised." The creature leaned in, its face like a black void, devouring light. Promises made in ignorance are the sweetest of all. With one last surge of strength, Emily gritted her teeth, fists clenched. Enough. At that moment, something deep within her sparked. She exhaled sharply, feeling the light within her swell against the surrounding darkness. The shadows shrieked in unison, recoiling like a tide drawn back from an incoming wave, but just then, a new sound pierced through the storm, an anguished wail that felt familiar, clawing at Emily's heart from somewhere beyond the shadows. "Help me, Emily!" Her breath caught, and the world seemed to tilt. No! It couldn't be. Was it really him? The voice was unmistakable, a desperate cry for aid, echoed from a realm she thought she'd abandoned. "Tom!" she called, the name breaking through the haze. "Don't listen to it." The creature hissed, eyes gleaming with ancient malice. "It's a trap." But Emily's heart was no longer bound by fear, it surged like wildfire, leaping toward the sound. She felt the darkness begin to fracture under the warmth that radiated from within her, the shadows twisting and screaming around her. "Emily, I need you!" came the plaintive call again, with a fierce howl that sent ripples through the air. She leaped toward the voice, tearing her way through the shadows that just moments ago sought to hold her back. The creature's snarls mixed with the screams, and she pressed forward, not knowing where it would lead her. As her fingertips grazed the last remnants of darkness, the shadows erupted into comets of smoke, swirling away from the blinding light that now emanated from her heart. She dove deeper into the brilliance, into the sound, where everything seemed limitless, but the creature's voice thundered in her ears, an ominous promise. "You will regret this choice, Emily. The true terror awaits." And just as she vanished into the light, she felt the world shift around her, the sensation of falling into an abyss echoing in the depths of her being. What would she find on the other side, and would it be enough to save her and her brother, or would she unwittingly unleash a far greater horror? As Emily dove into the light, she felt the darkness slip away, replaced by a warmth that wrapped around her like an embrace. The whispers quieted, and for a flicker of a moment, all was serene. But as she emerged, the relief was quickly replaced by confusion. She found herself standing in the remnants of a familiar room, the one she had shared with her brother, Tom. The walls were painted a cheery yellow, filled with remnants of happier times, their childhood laughter echoing off of every corner. Emily's heart swelled with bittersweet nostalgia as she gazed around. This was her sanctuary, but it felt tainted by the darkness she had just escaped. "Tom!" she shouted, voice cracking. She reached for the door, the familiarity flooding her with both joy and dread. Could he be waiting on the other side? The memory of his cries lingered, wrapping around her like the shadows still clinging to her. Suddenly, a familiar figure appeared at the edge of her vision. Tom stood there, looking exactly as she remembered, his smile bright, but there was an uncertainty in his eyes. You came back!" he exclaimed, arms open wide, but as she rushed to him, she felt the weight of betrayal. "You called for me!" she cried, panic clawing at her. "You need my help." His expression shifted, mouth falling into a frown as shadows crept behind him, whispering, screeching, the darkness at war with the light that bubbled within her. "You weren't meant to come," he said slowly, each syllable accompanied by a sweep of shadows that hinted at impending doom. The familiar warmth in her heart began to flicker. They want you back. You shouldn't have left. Not again. Emily shouted, fists clenching, frustration erupting. I can't let them take you again. I'm here to protect you. The echoes of their past were intoxicating, she could feel them pulling her closer like a siren. The shadows flickered perilously close, and she felt terror crawl over her skin. This isn't real. She screamed, heart pounding against her rib cage, you're not him. You're part of the nightmare. Am I? He asked, tilting his head curiously. Maybe the nightmare is what you run from when you should embrace it. Images bombarded her mind, laughter shared around this room, but also the horrors from Texas Tower, for the faces contorted in agony, their hands reaching for her. No! She shouted, shaking her head, breathing hard. You can't own me. Not anymore. Tom's expression darkened, and behind him, shadows began to stretch. They twisted, coiling tightly like vines around his form. Desperation clawed at her heart. You're not lost, I won't abandon you again. One final surge of warmth erupted within Emily. I choose you, even if you're trapped. We can break free together. As she reached out, instead of feeling the familiar grasp of her brother, her hands collided with the shadows, and the numbness spread, but she pressed forward. Every moment in this place has made me stronger. The shadows shrieked, a piercing wail echoing off the walls, losing their grip ever so slightly. Tom cried, his voice trembling. You can't fight this. But Emily steeled herself. I'm not fighting alone. She roared. You're still here. I see you. Her fist landed against the darkness, and light erupted from her fingertips, shattering the oppressive gloom with every ounce of willpower she possessed. The barriers around Tom splintered and broke, as if she had sparked a fire in the very heart of despair. Come with me. She shouted, her voice breaking through the haunting whispers. Suddenly, Tom's eyes brightened, and for a split second, he seemed real again before shadows surged to claim him. Remember, find the light. He cried, his voice fading as the darkness screeched in frustration. As the shadows lunged at her, Emily harnessed her love and strength, pouring everything into that light, forcing back the dark with the truth of what they shared. You can't take him. The shadows recoiled, and the room trembled with the force of her spirit. A blinding light exploded outward, engulfing everything as she launched herself forward, desperate to reach her brother. With a deafening roar, the shadows peeled away, scattering like dust in the wind. Emily! Tom shouted, suddenly by her side, bright and warm. They reached for each other, and as their hands clasped, light burst forth, illuminating everything and instantly freeing them from the dark. In an instant, they stood back in the sunlight, no longer bound to Texas Tower 4, but in a serene park, surrounded by the laughter of children. Time felt still, almost sacred. Did we? Tom questioned, his brow knit in confusion. Emily nodded, grinning through tears of relief. We did. We broke it. Their embrace was surrounded by warmth, a promise of hope as buzzes of life filled the air around them. The resonance of lost souls no longer echoed in her mind, only the brightness that surged from their reunion filled the void. Let us go home, Tom said, squeezing her hand. And as they walked away from the shadows, their laughter mingled with the sunlight, leaving behind the hauntings of their past, finally free, finally whole. Emily breathed deeply, heart full. They had faced the darkness together. And together, they had found their way into the light. So there you have it. If you enjoyed this nail-biting conclusion, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. Make sure to flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. Your thoughts matter. And hey, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting our channel through these actions.